Do you know, all this talk of missing episodes lately, it's made me think I should just check my shed to see if there's anything I've forgotten. Now, what have we got here? Oh my word. Wow, I had completely forgotten about this episode. What else have we got in here? Anything under here? Oh, wait. Surely that's not... It is. It's the Barnardo's documentary. Oh, it's the full reel, and it's never been seen. Time to fire up the wet gate. Some of the best Dalek photos ever taken in the 1960s were unrelated to the TV show for which they were built. Many Doctor Who fans will be familiar with these pictures, but as a result of a rabbit hole we've been stuck down for 2 decades, we've uncovered many more images which most people will never have seen before, and some very rare film footage. This investigation concerns one specific Dalek casing, unrivaled in its philanthropy and unrivaled in distance travelled across Britain. This Dalek, which we number 4, belonged to the charity then called Dr. Barnardo's, and through painstaking investigation of newspaper archives, Facebook groups, and by conducting interviews, we've been able to follow its departure from the TV series and chart its numerous missions with the charity, including weird refurbishments and strange public appearances. Dr. Barnardo's did have more than one Dalek in their possession at different times, but only one of them defected to their good cause and stayed loyal to the charity work to its mysterious end. So let's travel back to Doctor Who's first Christmas in 1963 to understand why the Doctor Who team let go of such a valuable asset, explore the BBC's attempts to return it to the fold, and see if we can uncover its ultimate fate.
If you'd like to support our research, contribute ideas, and see clips and early videos, then check out the link in the description on how to join our Patreon.
After their screen debut on the 28th of December 1963, the Daleks became an immediate sensation, and after their demise in the story's final instalment, the BBC were inundated with scores of letters from children protesting their destruction. But with the weekly turnover of television episodes, not just of Doctor Who, each of which was generating new props, costumes and sets, storage space was at a premium. Jack Kine, pictured here on the left, was the head and co-founder of the BBC's fledgling visual effects department, and he sent a memo saying that he could only provide storage space for 2 of the 4 props. The remaining pair would be smashed or destroyed. Resourceful producer Verity Lambert sought a way to preserve the expensive props. Her solution was to take advantage of the Daleks' runaway success and create an ongoing source of publicity and goodwill. On the 3rd of January 1964, less than a week after their first appearance on TV, Lambert spoke to her boss and head of serials Donald Wilson to formally request permission to donate 2 of the Dalek machines to Dr. Barnardo's, a charity that provided homes across the country for vulnerable children. The very same day, producer Verity Lambert's secretary Val Speyer spoke to another BBC department and the donation was agreed to go ahead, although it was noted that it does not have to be an official BBC presentation. In the meantime, all 4 Daleks would need to be stored somewhere temporarily until the more permanent arrangements could be made, so Verity Lambert arranged with H. Jimmy Plater of Lime Grove to store the 4 Dalek casings and the special control panels over the weekend following the last recording on Friday the 10th of January. On the 14th, the 2 Daleks that the BBC were keeping and the panels were picked up by Peter Day of Special Effects and taken for storage in the effects store at Ealing Film Studios. The other 2 casings destined for Barnardo's needed to be stored for up to a week longer. Thomas John Barnardo, who in fact never completed his doctorate, opened his first residential home in December 1870 at number 18 Stepney Causeway in the East End of London. Over time, the home expanded into the neighbouring buildings and further properties were acquired in the surrounding area. By the turn of the century, Barnardo's occupied almost all of the street's west side. They had also established a hospital across the road, which was connected to the main home by an underground subway. Directly behind the home on Bower Street was a large new building, accommodating up to 400 children, in addition to workshops, schoolrooms and recreational facilities. This photo shows the hospital on the right, the Stepney Causeway homes in the centre, and the large Bower Street building to the left. Years later, the advent of the Second World War led to the permanent closure of most of these properties, but the Stepney complex continued to be used by Barnardo's as their administrative headquarters, and it was here that the donated Daleks would be received. Arrangements were made with the charity's representative, Miss Bunting, and on the 4th of February 1964, just 3 days after transmission of the final episode of The Daleks, the 2 Dalek casings were delivered. Posing for the press, Barnardo's staff gathered with the new arrivals at the rear of the Bower Street building, and this photo is looking north along the cut-through lane that runs parallel to Bower Street and Stepney Causeway. This is proven by the slight background glimpse of the sign for GS Fish, the confusingly named pawnbroker store on the opposite side of the commercial road. The Daleks were also photographed at the north end of Stepney Causeway itself, next to the Royal Duke pub. When trying to tell the original 4 Daleks apart, the front of the shoulder section is often the best place to look for distinguishing characteristics. We've assigned each of these Daleks a number, and this is a little guide to how we tell them apart. Dalek 1 has a thinner collar under its gun and arm boxes. Dalek 2 has a smaller pivot hole for its gun. Dalek 3's lower collar lacked the outer 2 rivets under its appendages, and the rivet in the top middle join is very low down. Dalek 4 had a very wide band covering the join at the front of the lower collar, plus 2 small holes above and below the gun pivot. And it is this 4th prop that we are going to concentrate on. You'll also notice that the ball joints protrude to an unusual degree, and in this shot of it on screen you can see that the top of the leading edge of the skirt has some damage. Dalek 4 is on the right during the ambush. It's the Dalek middle left when the quartet have a big chat about their radiation problems, where you can glimpse the wider band and the damage on the skirt, and it develops a noisy wheel for this scene in the final episode. The aforementioned holes above and below the gun allow us to discern that the Dalek in this picture is Dalek 4. And it's this prop which will be the main character in our story. The wide band on the lower collar has now been replaced, and curiously in this picture, the shoulder section is rotated a few degrees out of alignment with the skirt. And referring back to this picture, which has Dalek 4 on the left, a helpful fact is that its counterpart has already lost its right-hand light cover, which, for the time being at least, can help in a process of elimination. The appeal of the props wasn't just limited to the children, as the Barnardo staff were also keen to get up close and find out what was inside the casings. Sandy Hall recalls,
"I worked in the head office of Stepney Causeway. I remember someone coming in and saying, if you look out the window you'll see Daleks arriving. We looked inside and there was just a thin plank of wood as far as I can remember. I couldn't fathom out how they moved because your feet would show below the bottom rim."
The staff didn't get long to have fun with their new toys, as the Daleks were almost immediately transported to the Barnardo's village in Barkingside, Ilford, and despite the grainy quality of this image, the holes above and below the gun are still visible, showing Dalek 4 is on the left. The homes in Barkingside were just some of the many that were owned by Barnardo's, so it was only fair that the Daleks' residence there should be temporary. The 2 props would soon make their way to the Worley School in Waltham Abbey. This photo, showing Dalek 4, was published in the March edition of the BBC's in-house magazine Ariel, demonstrating that the corporation was proudly keeping up with the props that they had donated. The photo reveals that even at this early stage the damage was beginning to show, as a section of the arm box has delaminated, that is to say that a strip of the wooden surface has been broken off. This photo taken at Worley's is one of the greatest images ever captured in Dalek history. It beautifully shows the human side of this charitable gift, allowing us to be transported with great clarity to a memorable moment for these children living difficult lives. But also, thanks to this clarity, it gives us an unrivaled look at the way Shawcraft built these original Daleks, and an intimate view of Dalek 4. At the bottom we can see the fabric, which looks to be carpet underlay covering the fender, maybe as a bit of soundproofing as well as to reduce impact damage as the Daleks moved around. At the top of the skirt we can see that dent on the leading edge, and that the fiberglass skirt is strengthened with a wooden top. The underside of the shoulders is a glorious sight, showing the pencil marks of the original cut lines, the wooden blocks that keep the aluminium collars away from the surface, and because the gun and arm boxes are not enclosed underneath, the wooden brace that holds the back of the ball joints in place. This photo also gives a very clear view of that delaminated surface. We can also see the rod at the back of the gun, which is used to shoot out the mechanism for the extermination effect. Other photos taken that day are just as charming, but for the Dalek forensics department, not quite as useful. Word of the Barnardo's Daleks seems to have spread, inspiring requests from outside the charity to borrow the props for fundraising activities. In March, the two Daleks were separated. Whilst one remained at Worley's, our Dalek 4 made what would be the first of many lengthy road trips, making a 113-mile journey north to the Loughborough College of Advanced Technology. The Dalek was pictured in the Leicester Mercury, purportedly having mistaken a postbox for an alien similar to itself, all part of the annual Rag Week, a traditional event organised by students to raise money for charitable causes. If you look closely, you'll notice that the occupant on this occasion is not a joyful child. The newspaper coverage of the time stated that the Dalek was collecting on the streets of Leicester the previous night, and it would feature in the next day's carnival procession. In due course, Dalek 4 returned to London, and on the 18th of May it appeared at Gordon Fields in Ilford for the Grand Whit Monday Fete. Carol Ann Ford, who played Susan in Doctor Who, was due to open the event but arrived late because of rehearsals for the final episode of The Aztecs. Blue Peter's Christopher Trace and Valerie Singleton also attended, which is evidence that Doctor Who was far from alone in reaching out to audiences beyond the borders of their television screens. Dalek 4 was stationed in one of the site's buildings, as seen in these fantastic snaps sent to us by Ellie Gallagher. The view of the rear of the Dalek reveals that the hemispheres on the corner panel have caved in a little, presumably from some impact during manoeuvres, but enough fiberglass inside seems to be keeping them from dropping out entirely. For sixpence, kids at the event were allowed to sit inside the Dalek and go for a ride. This photo has 2 points of interest. Firstly, the arm box has further delaminated since it was at Worley's, and secondly, the child photographed is called Charles Todd. In an amazing coincidence, some 30 years later and 140 miles away from Ilford, Charles would become an English teacher, and one of his pupils would be John Green, co-writer of this video. Despite its busy schedule, the prop was still in remarkably good condition, save for the fabric that normally ran round the fender having now been removed. In June of 1964, Dalek 4 travelled to Leicester, where it was on loan to Barnardo's Glenfield Frith Drive home, where it was their star attraction at the annual fete. On the 4th of July 1964, the same day that the third episode of The Censorites was scrubbed due to extended coverage of Wimbledon, Dalek 4 had made the journey up to Northampton to the All Saints Church, helping with Barnardo's Flag Day collection. Its plunger was still missing, and part of the gun mechanism appeared to be hanging loose from the end of the barrel. It wouldn't be long before Dalek 4 was on the road again, travelling to Norwich in East Anglia, 120 miles away from its previous appointment. On the 18th of July, the prop could be seen in the central square at Orford Hill, a little over a mile away from Barnardo's Westwood Hostel. A large bolt now protruded from next to the arm to hold it in place. Meanwhile, the patch on the outside of the gun had come off, taking some of the paint with it. The two halves of the lower collar are no longer connecting in the middle. Whilst Dalek 4 had endured a busy 6 months of adventures since it escaped the devastation of Skaro on television, viewers at home had been longing to see more of the alien menace in the Doctor Who programme itself. The wheels were set in motion to bring back the Daleks for a second battle with William Hartnell's Doctor, and director Richard Martin wanted as many of the aliens on screen as possible. To this end, 2 new props were made by Shawcraft Models to accompany the pair held in storage at the BBC, and enquiries were also made to borrow back those that were donated to Barnardo's. On the 12th of August 1964, director Richard Martin personally drove to Stepney Causeway to look at the Daleks, and they subsequently arrived for recording of the second episode of the Dalek Invasion of Earth on the 25th of September 1964. Dalek 4 is here on the left, and you can just make out the edge of its delaminated section below the arm, as well as further unsightly loss of paint around the gun boxes. Dalek 4's large shoulder bolt had at least been replaced by something more discreet, and its lower collar had been fixed. The two new Daleks had longer eye stalks with silver eyeballs and a new eye disc arrangement carrying 5 discs spaced widely apart, and the two BBC Daleks had their eyes replaced to match. However, the pair of props from Barnardo's, which included our Dalek 4, did not get the same upgrade. Although it had the reduced number of discs, they did not decrease in size in a neat progression. All 6 Daleks were, however, fitted with new, larger fenders and dishes on their backs to explain the Daleks' increased mobility. During filming, Dalek 4 had several prominent moments, seen here on the right of picture during the battle scene, and then a good close-up showing its poor condition, followed by an even closer shot of the gun showing how the gun box was delaminating. There's another good close-up before it joins the Dalek Supreme on the saucer. It is Dalek 4 that famously confronts the mannequin in the Transport Museum, finding it subcultural, whatever that means. And it is the last Dalek to disembark the saucer. It is on the right of picture here, in the control room of the Dalek mine, and it is Dalek 4 that shoots Ian's rope, sending him falling down the bomb shaft. Finally, it is Dalek 4 that is held aloft in the rebellion at the end, with its large fender removed. Once work had wrapped on the Dalek's second serial, arrangements were made for the Daleks to be returned to their respective owners, and Barnardo's Dalek 4 departed the Shawcraft workshops in the first week of November 1964. Exactly which prop accompanied it back to Barnardo's is a story for another time. But with the winter season approaching, Barnardo's Dalek 4 and its mysterious companion were quick to resume their charitable duties. The pair were on hand for the week-long cycle and motorcycle show at Earl's Court in London, where they were amongst the attractions at a children's play area staffed by Barnardo's. Next came the Dalek invasion of Hemel Hempstead. With transmission of the Daleks' latest TV serial underway, children at Adeyfield Hall would have been shocked to find 2 alien visitors at their Christmas party. The Daleks both looked fresh despite their week at Earl's Court, and the party was completed by Father Christmas arriving in his one-man spaceship, naturally. Further festive fun came at Fairfields Halls in Croydon on the 5th of December, when the highlight of a Guides and Scouts Christmas dance was a race between 2 Daleks. Their next challenge would be less of a sprint and more of a marathon. For the past 5 Christmases, students at Newland Park College in Chalfont St Giles had undertaken a charity walk on behalf of Barnardo's. Each year they had hauled a large item behind them, be it a decorated car, a 10-foot-tall Christmas stocking, or a mechanical elephant called Barney. But more on him another time. On this occasion, they wanted to pull the 2 Barnardo's Daleks through day and night from Chalfont to West Bromwich, some 113 miles. They would stop at various locations along the way to collect toys and gifts for the charity. Doctor Who producer Verity Lambert passed the details of the event to the Drama Publicity Office. This clipping shows the arduous event in the final third of its journey, passing through Warwick, and the Dalek facing away from us still has its dish from the TV appearance which was recorded a month and a half earlier. Look a little more closely and you can see the delamination on the gun box showing that it is Dalek 4 facing the camera. Here is another newspaper clipping showing the Daleks at the Lord Leicester Hotel, and here is a better quality photograph from the same occasion. Note in the background of the picture the dotted metal framework, which allows us to work out that this unrelated newspaper clipping shows a Dalek at the same event. But now Dalek 4 is facing away from us, and we can see that it does not have a dish at this time. And finally, this clipping shows the Dalek at their final destination, pictured with what I think is a giant cuddly kangaroo for some reason. The students' charitable tradition continued the next year when they pulled an old vehicle made into the shape of a shoe, and in 1966 a giant birthday cake adorned with 100 candles to mark the centenary of Dr. Barnardo's. As the year turned to 1965, Dalek 4 was the star of a set of children's lectures on science and engineering in Leicester. Then it travelled further afield than ever before, journeying to Wales in February for the Bangor University Rag Week, which culminated in a parade of floats through the town. Rosemary Fulks, who worked at the local Barnardo's home, had arranged their appearance, and with thanks to Dyfrig Wyn-Jones, we can present this incredible rare footage of the Barnardo's Daleks on the float. Note that the Dalek at the rear is standing on its larger Dalek Invasion of Earth fender section, and it is the prop that still has its parabolic dish attached to the rear, so this Dalek retained its TV appearance where our Dalek 4 did not. A number of unhappy locals reported hooliganism taking place, and sections of the generally good-natured crowds had become rather too enthusiastic and were pelting the floats with eggs and flour. Eyewitnesses reported that the Daleks themselves took quite a beating. That's a joke about eggs. The first week of August saw the Royal National Eisteddfod of Wales take place in Newtown. The event was a huge celebration of music and poetry and still takes place to this day. On display at a Barnardo's stand was Dalek 4 in a very sorry state. Its eye had broken off and it had received a crude replacement. Several of the hemispheres were pushed in and its collars were bashed. The gun rails had come loose, slipping down the barrel, and a new plate had been fitted to hold the gun pivot in place. A handwritten sign jammed into the upper collar proclaimed that this Dalek was one of the first seen on TV. An eyewitness account of a later appearance tells us that the newly painted ring under the neck was red, but the splash of colour would have done little to spruce up this sad figure. A few weeks later, on the 28th of August, Dalek 4 travelled to the West Country, where it was the star of the 21st anniversary of the Kingswood Community Association Garden Fete. A different and much longer replacement eye stalk was now fitted, along with new large light covers. Since its Newtown appearance, the Dalek had also been altered even further. Thanks once again to our eyewitness account, we know that the lower collar was now red to match the stripe under the neck. The hemispheres were painted, seemingly at random, with reds and darker blues. Strangest of all, Dalek 007 was now stenciled onto the front of the dome. Had the children of Barnardo's given the proper makeover in red, white and blue, in homage to another British pop culture phenomenon? The fete had huge numbers of people attend and raised a record amount of money. The local newspaper, the New Observer, received several complaints from people who had been unable to see the Dalek due to the sheer volume of attendees. The centre's warden, Bill Pope, reported that they would try to get the Dalek back for a return visit. In early September, in East Ham, Alfie Dark was helping to arrange a fete at the local memorial hospital. He had previous Dalek wrangling experience, having been on the organising committee for the East Ham Town Show back in 1964, in which the event secured a Dalek, but more on that another time. After collection, the prop was stored at his home until required, and these photos show Alfie's son Mick with Dalek 4 in the garden at Langdon Crescent, which backed onto the East Ham Grammar School, now Langdon Academy. Whilst he had the Dalek, Mick devised a cheeky money-making scheme.
I used to charge other kids 1 penny to see it and 2 pence to sit in it, until my mum caught me and told me to give the money back.
The fete eventually took place on the 11th of September, and Carol Ann Ford was on hand to open the festivities, being reunited with Dalek 4 almost 1 year after she'd recorded her final Doctor Who episode, which was also Dalek 4's last appearance in the TV show. The following month, Dalek 4 travelled west again for an appearance at Crispin Hall in Street, Somerset. A local Christian group had arranged to use the prop for their annual Petticoat Lane sale, which raised funds for charity. Dalek 4 paraded up and down the high street, attracting children from all over town. A haulage contractor based in neighbouring Glastonbury had collected the prop from London. Prior to making the return journey, he stopped at the Foundry garage to fill up. The Dalek was offloaded, allowing a local man to take photos, and we have his son, Ken Nichols, to thank for these brilliant pictures. They show that a swapping of protuberances had occurred, the gun rails were now clumsily attached to the eye stalk, the replacement eyeball was fixed to the end of the gun barrel, and the large dome lights were now completely missing. Our eyewitness account of Dalek 4 in its 007 colours hails from November at a Christmas fair in St Saviour's Church in Croydon. Soon after, and just a few miles away, the prop appeared as Dickie the Dalek at St Barnabas Church in Sutton. Photos from their Christmas bazaar on the 4th of December reveal that Dalek 4 had undergone a remarkable transformation. For reasons unclear, it had been given a substantial refurbishment, restoring it to a close approximation of its original appearance. Gone were the improvised colours, 007 dome stenciling and incorrect appendages, and its new paintwork and eye stalk were a world away from the ad hoc slapdash maintenance it had previously received during its time with Barnardo's. But what had necessitated this radical revamp? Perhaps a VIP event appearance? Or even a use in some form on TV? For now, the mystery remains unsolved. If you were a fan who owned a copy of Terry Nation's Dalek Special, within its pages you may have noticed this seemingly innocuous photo. It shows Dalek 4 flanked by 3 boys wielding toy guns. Closer examination reveals these weapons to be the anti-Dalek jet immobilizer, neutron exterminator and sonic disintegrator, all produced by Lincoln International. It had been the year of Dalek mania, and with companies clamouring to release Dalek-based merchandise, Lincoln had received the license for their first Dalek water pistol, the anti-Dalek fluid neutralizer, in March. Now, with the lucrative Christmas market approaching and 3 more products having been approved, Lincoln, who were based just 4 miles from Barnardo's Stepney headquarters, appeared to have taken the chance to use Dalek 4 in some promotion. The prop's new eye stalk was already missing, but little else about it had changed since the church bazaar. Promotion continued at the Metropole Hotel in Brighton, with the British Toy Fair beginning on the 30th of January 1966. On the seafront, directly opposite the hotel, Dalek 4 was once again under fire from Lincoln artillery. From this angle we see the prop now sported, for purposes unclear, a pair of fins in the lower rear hemisphere positions. These precisely crafted additions were presumably another element of the prop's mystery overhaul. Curiously, the other Dalek was one of the Aru film dummy props, and if you'd like to learn more about these unusual Daleks and how one survived to the present day, check out our video on it. The flip side of this frenzied wave of Dalek mania over the past 12 months was that the creatures had now reached their cultural saturation point. After a first Dalek movie, swathes of merchandise, a third and now 4th TV story, the longest to date, the public at large were growing increasingly tired of the metal monsters. From here on, the Barnardo's Daleks seemed to have been requested for fewer and fewer events. Indeed, there is a 6-month gap between the toy promotion and our next confirmed sighting of Dalek 4, pictured here at the Barnardo's centenary fete on the 25th of June 1966. Another new eye stalk has been cobbled together with what looks like a car headlamp at the end, and the arm joint is now black for some reason. An important change to note is that the neck mesh is now lighter in colour, possibly sprayed silver. And this photo from June 1966 helps us to date the final image that we have of Dalek 4. An appearance at the Church of St John the Divine on Morney Road in Romford is the last confirmed sighting of Dalek 4. The exact date is unknown, but given that the event was a Christmas bazaar and that it has the silver neck mesh first seen in the summer of 1966, then logically it must have been taken around December 1966. At the event, children took turns being pushed around in the prop, raising funds for a new choir vestry, which seems to have been completed by 1967. Another victory for the Daleks. The final days of the 2 Daleks are shrouded in mystery, with rumours abounding as to their fate. One unconfirmed tale suggests that one prop was pushed into a marshy pond behind one of the Barnardo's homes, never to be seen again. Another reports that Daleks could be seen at Barnardo's home in Sidcup, Kent, towards the end of the decade. Other sightings suggest that, fittingly, their story ends in the very same place it began, Barnardo's old headquarters in Stepney Causeway. As the 60s drew to a close, the writing was on the wall for the antiquated Stepney complex. It was becoming increasingly expensive to maintain the cluster of properties, which themselves were growing increasingly unsuitable for modern administrative operations. The Barnardo's village in Barkingside was chosen for a new purpose-built office, which was officially opened in July 1969. Back at the Stepney complex, a large block of brutalist flats now surrounded the former hospital building, but the old Barnardo's properties remained for a few years. They were used by the charity as a storage area, and local children saw the empty streets and abandoned buildings as an exciting playground, until they were chased away by security guards or policemen. After some extensive searching, we managed to find quotes from one local and spoke to another, both of whom lived close to Stepney Causeway in 1969. Mickey Tomlinson recalls,
"We managed to get one of those Daleks. We borrowed it from the grounds of where Ogilvie House now stands. Must have been about 1969. We abandoned it in Edward Mann Close after a Barnardo's security official chased us into Caroline Street."
And we spoke to local Gary Phillips, who was able to take up the story where Mick had left off.
I remember me and my friends finding the Dalek abandoned near the side road that ran parallel with the railway and opposite Barnardo's. We knew it came from Barnardo's. I believe it had just closed down as we explored the ruins not long after and found a long underground tunnel on the site. We kept the Dalek in our building stairwell in Edward Mann Close for a couple of days before it was stolen by someone. That is as much as I know. It's a real shame because we all loved the Dalek but had no idea what to do with it, and it was too big to take in home, otherwise I would have done. We kept it for about 3 days before it was stolen. I have no clue who took it as we were all at school.
We have one final sighting from a local who suggests they saw a pair of Daleks abandoned in the Stepney Causeway grounds in the early 1970s. Assuming this date is correct, perhaps Barnardo's found and recovered their property. Eventually, the Stepney Causeway site was redeveloped. Not a single one of the Barnardo's buildings exists today, though Edward Mann Close, the Royal Duke Pub Corner and even the GS Fish Store do still remain as a reminder of the old community. As for the Daleks, it's unknown whether Barnardo's moved the props to a new location. The creatures were still popular in the 1970s, and so logically, if Barnardo's still owned them, they would surely have been making use of them, and we could find no more traces of Daleks at Barnardo's events. After 2 triumphant television appearances, years of near constant public use and abuse, countless miles of cross-country road travel, and helping to raise thousands of pounds for the charity, the 2 Daleks seem to have faded into obscurity, forgotten even by their adoptive owners. But was this the end for the props? Was the Dalek in Edward Mann Close spirited away by persons unknown? Could both Daleks have been rescued before the redevelopment of Stepney Causeway? Just maybe, the Barnardo's Daleks are still out there, waiting to re-emerge and delight us once again. Thank you to everyone who generously contributed personal photos and recollections making this video possible. If you had an encounter with a Dalek in the 60s, 70s or even 80s, know someone who did, or have a relevant picture, please get in touch.